Yeah, okay. Hello and welcome to Coffee Chat Time. My name's Kim Chapman and our guest today is Val Caldwell. Val, welcome to NAC TV. I am a retired teacher who worked with the Beautiful Plains School Division, and you were invited to talk to the school division today to talk to the students and the staff about the important issue of online and internet safety. I know that this issue is very important and very broad, and that this is not the first time that you've been invited to speak with the schools. Could you introduce yourself to the NAC TV viewers and tell us a bit about your professional background?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I love coming to Nipawa. This is I think my fourth consecutive year running with the students. So the grade 8s have heard me in grade 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yes.
And then last year we also started doing the grade 4s as well. So yes, and it's always, the school is wonderful, the community is supportive. This initiative started many years ago through my work with Child and Family Services, actually. I was a program facilitator, and we started to notice a lot of parenting stresses around and back in those days, it was Facebook and
Yes.
Kik and MSN Messenger. But there was a lot of parents coming to sessions more concerned about technology, and there wasn't a lot of resources available. So myself and a co-facilitator, Lori McMecken, developed the first ever virtual realities, we called it, presentation. We actually did it in Minnedosa down the road. And so we presented to adults, and then the feedback was overwhelming, who's educating kids. So that's kind of how it all got started. So I developed, first of all, grade 5 to grade 8 and traveled around Westman and spoke to the kids, and then branched out into high school. I worked with a friend of mine who is a retired RCMP officer who was in the Internet Child Exploitation Unit.
Yeah.
So we developed more age-appropriate presentations for high school kids. And and then a few years ago, I decided to leave the agency and take this on a more full-time basis. So that's kind of
And
the
it sounds
background.
like you're working with various agencies within communities to promote this and to provide up-to-date information as well.
Yeah, I do try and stay on top of it. It is a full-time job. And I do find a lot of times parents will come to sessions and they'll express feeling, I didn't know any of this, or I'm not doing my job as a parent. The reality is it's a full-time job and I can't stay on top of it because it's ever-changing. And so my message to parents is we're all in this together to learn. And I do try to stay as current and relevant as I can, but it's exhausting to keep up with this ever-changing world.
And you've spoken a little bit about this already, but can you describe what online or internet safety all involves?
Yeah, so my approach is very much a mental health-based approach. I really try to focus on, the way we behave online should be the same as the way we behave in person. So we want kids to understand when we talk about online concerns. With the younger kids, I actually design the presentations where they guide me. So I'll ask a leaded question like, can you tell me what Val should worry about when kids in grade 4 are playing Roblox or on Snapchat? And then they come forward with the information, which is wonderful.
Yeah, they're familiar with those components and they're able to guide the conversation.
Yeah, so we just want them to understand that there are, and the thing is, kids are smart. They know when they're calm and relaxed and in their regulated minds, they're able to list all the things that they know are concerns online. It's when they get on there and they get gaming and the emotions get high, they forget the things that they've learned. So it's really about focusing on that. The way we behave in person is the same we should behave online, and then age appropriately talk about the concerns, and which, some of them there are pedophiles, there are predators online. And so those are conversations that we have to have with kids because the reality is it's out there.
And you're just leading into my next question, which is, why is it important to educate not only parents, but students and children about this topic?
Yeah, so from a child protection perspective, when we started this all those years ago, it was the onset of social media. And so protecting kids online is, when we protect kids in person, you have conversations like, don't talk to a stranger. So a stranger would be a person they've never met.
Stranger danger.
But now in kids' eyes, that person that I game with on Roblox is not a stranger, they're my friend.
Yes.
And so there's so many more concerns online when it comes to the way kids view the world. I think it's important to have conversations I love doing the parent sessions at night because I think that I call it bridging the gap, because I'm 53. So there's a huge gap between how I grew up and how these kids are growing up.
Sure.
And my concern is, how do we protect kids in a playground that we've never played in?
Yeah.
So if parents are not familiar with the online world and they provide devices for 5-year-olds, how do we keep them safe in a world that we don't understand?
And you just, again, led into my next question.
It's like we practice.
Yes. What are some of those, how can parents protect their children from these online dangers?
So the first piece of advice that I have for all adults, people always say how young is too young, like how young should you talk to kids about online predators? And my advice is, the day before you give them a device, you need to start. Age appropriately, of course. We need to talk about pornography because it's easily accessible to kids. We need to talk about online predators. We need to talk about the real risks and dangers. We can do it in a way that's age appropriate, but why would we give a 5-year-old a device that is a window to the world and not explain to them the dangers? Right? We wouldn't give a 5-year-old the keys to a car and hope they can figure out how to drive it. So it really is about education from a young age, and it's important for them to be aware of the dangers. I know a lot of times parents struggle with how much, if I tell them too much, it'll scare them. So I think sometimes using more leading questions, like if a kid comes home and says something about, oh, I heard you can date people on Roblox, I would say, that's really interesting. Tell me more. What do you know about that? Because a lot of times they don't know as much as we think they do. So we don't want to give them too much when they're younger. But definitely before they have a device, we should start the hard conversations.
You talked a little bit about explaining those risks to our children and our students. Where do parents go for more information about this? Because they can come tonight to see you and to talk and ask questions. Do you have any other suggestions about where else they could find out information on how to talk to their kids?
Yeah, so cybertip.ca and needhelpnow.ca are two excellent websites run by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. So there's really good resources and information for parents. I always tell parents the technology you fear is your greatest adversary, it's your greatest weapon against what you fear, right? So Google, what are the top 10 apps kids are using? What is the language of sexting? What are which apps have the most predatory behavior? If we use the technology that we fear, then it helps us learn how to use it, right? So I think
show the students and kids that it's a tool. There's going to be positives and negatives. Let's use the positives to watch out for the negatives.
And that's one of the things that I talk with kids about. I explain it to them where I don't have a problem with technology. I use social media. I'm not against it. My concern is finding a healthy balance with it. We don't want to see kids overusing or getting into the territory of addiction. And so how I explain it to kids and adults is, if you're spending time in a space and when you leave there you feel worse than you did when you entered it, it's not a good space for you. So if they're on Instagram and they're finding that they're spending their whole time comparing themselves, I don't look like that person. How come they're so slim? How come their face has no blemishes? Then that's not a good place for us mentally. If we're in a space where we leave feeling good or better, then that's the kind of space we need to be in.
You've alluded to a little bit already, but can you talk a bit more about some of those signs that a parent might see in their child, that the child's been exposed to inappropriate content online or experienced online abuse? What should we be looking for?
So I think, first of all, what I would recommend to all adults is monitoring their child's online activity. Sometimes parents will say things like, well, it's their device and it's not really my place. And they are our children and our responsibility is to keep them safe. So my first recommendation is to monitor. Snapchat, for example, when your kids are younger, you can add something called Family Center. So it allows you to monitor their accounts. So you can't open their snaps, but you can see who they're adding and who they're talking to. So it's kind of it gives you that, it's kind of like the days of old with the water glass against the bedroom door. So you're listening to the conversation. Be transparent with kids. When my kids were young, when they were provided devices, we had the passcodes to their devices, but my kids also had the passcode to mine. I'm very much an open book. So, my kids were not allowed to take their devices to their bedroom. My husband and I didn't either. So we really tried to follow the same rules. If it's important for my kids to get a good night's sleep, it's important for me too.
Yeah.
But I think parents need to monitor more. They need to try whenever possible to make themselves aware of, I referenced the playground earlier. So it's the same when you take your kids to a physical playground, you assess the danger. So it's kind of the same. If you're going to allow them on an online space, you have to assess the dangers. And then open, honest, non-judgmental conversations. Let them know that they can come to us if something happens. If they have questions, that it's perfectly fine to come and ask those questions. And I think sometimes adults our emotions get in the way, and it's easier to just overreact and take everything away.
Yeah.
So I think we just have to have those open, honest conversations.
And probably to admit to them, not sure what's going on, not sure what to do. Let's investigate together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what else can parents and educators do when a child experiences inappropriate content or abuse?
So there's lots of different avenues depending on the situation. If it's something like sexting or sextortion, those are things that need to be handled by law enforcement. So the ICE unit, the Internet Child Exploitation Unit, they specialize in that here in the province of Manitoba. So certainly not saying don't go to your local detachment, but if it's specific to sextortion, those types of things, I would recommend going straight to the experts who not only know how to investigate it, but know how to handle it in terms of what we say to kids. And because there's a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment that's attached to these things. And so we just want the language that we use to be appropriate and non-judgmental. I think seeking help and asking for resources, reaching out to mental health professionals, getting our kids the guidance and help they need. Addiction is a huge thing with technology. So talking about, again, those healthy limits. But I do think for parents, if they feel overwhelmed or like they're in over their head, reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. And you today, you've gone to the school already, and you're doing a parent workshop this evening. How can the schools and the parents work together to teach kids about online safety?
Yeah, so for me, my ultimate goal, if I could have my dream, would be to have conversations infused in the curriculum starting in kindergarten.
Yes.
Kids in the Know is a wonderful program. That's Canadian Centre for Child Protection again. It talks about, like, the younger kids, what's the difference between a keep secret and a speak secret, right? Giving them the language to use at an appropriate age. So those types of programs, if schools can implement those, they are, that Kids in the Know is a wonderful program. It does also dabble into the online world in their modules and stuff. But I would love to see it as part of our curriculum going forward because I see kids in kindergarten with online issues. So
absolutely,
if we're going to provide these devices for these really young kids, we have to provide some kind of a safety net. I think parents having an open, honest dialogue with schools, parents recognizing that schools cannot solve all problems, also recognizing that just because it happened at home does not mean it doesn't bleed back into the school day. And I do find that's a lot of the issue is there'll be like a bullying situation on a gaming site at night, but then it carries on at school the next day. So those are hard lines for educators because where does it start and where does it stop? So we're a team and we should all be pulling the rope in the same direction. So work together to support the kids whenever possible.
And we're a team for parents and the school as well. There's also community members at large and community organizations. And how is there something different we could be talking about with community organizations?
Well, I do want to say a huge thank you to Miles for Mental Health for they continually support these initiatives in the school for me to come visit. So I'm always very appreciative to them. I think the ongoing support within communities, I know to bring in presentations, to bring in education, it's costly for schools. There's a cost that's associated with it. If there are community groups or organizations like Miles for Mental Health that are willing to sponsor presentations or help schools out that way. But I also try to always encourage everyone to create safety nets around kids in every aspect. So my ultimate hope would be kids have safe and trusted adults in every aspect of life. So at school, in the community, at their sporting events, at church, I want kids to be surrounded by safe, healthy, trusted adults.
You've mentioned a little bit about addictions, online addictions. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, because certainly as an educator, I too have worried about that. Addictions in people as young as 5
Yeah.
and perhaps even younger. So if you can talk a little bit about what that looks like, so that as a parent or a community member, I might recognize that and then try to start up a conversation with a student.
Well, this is a wonderful opportunity to fulfill a promise I made. So quite often when I speak in schools, kids will come and have hard conversations.
Yeah.
So I had a young fellow in grade 7 come to me after a presentation and disclose that he was recently diagnosed by a psychiatrist as a digital addict in grade 7. And so that's a very hard conversation to have with a youth that young. He started when he was 4. He was given a device with no limitations, no controls, and no monitoring. So that's the first thing, right? We don't want to give kids unlimited access to this. About an hour a day is all they should have on this stuff.
Thank
right?
you. That was another question I
absolutely.
was going to talk about.
And not just for the safety aspect, for brain development, right?
Yes.
For healthy brain development. So we need to have rules from the time they're young. And where I think adults go wrong with rules is they implement them without taking the time to talk about why the rules are important.
Sure.
Right? So take time to talk to kids about why we only go on an hour a day. This young fellow that shared this with me, the heartbreaking thing he asked me to share with adults is, and these are his words, please care enough about kids to actually check and monitor what they're doing and take it away sometimes because we can't do it ourselves. That's a heartbreaking thing to hear from a kid in grade 7.
What an adult thing to say.
Right?
Yeah.
But this child now will deal with this addiction for the rest of his life. And that's and so I share his story because he told me he would only tell me if I promised to share it with everyone I speak to, because he doesn't want other kids to go through what he's gone through.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you to that young man for sharing that with you.
I was and I'm always so proud of kids when they have the courage to come forward. And I always try to create an environment that's non-judgmental, and we just want kids to come and talk to us. My biggest fear or worry is that kids are struggling with hard things and they don't want to come forward because they're afraid they'll get in trouble, or that they'll be shamed or blamed for things that are out of their control.
Pass shame on parents, which again is not something a kid wants to do, and it's not something we as educators want to do either. We want to present facts and provide tips. So
yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for mentioning that an hour a day, because I know that in the past we've had parents ask us as teachers, what should we be doing? Asking for genuine help and suggestions. And so that's good for us to hear as well, an hour a day, and we can pass that on to parents because they do want guidance on what they should be helping their children with.
Well, and right now, the average teenager in Canada spends about 8 hours, 39 minutes a day on screen time. So, and the average adult is 6 hours, 18 minutes. So we're not very far behind that. And my biggest thing is we are the mirror to kids. So if we are going to talk about balance and a healthy lifestyle, we have to show them. Kids learn far more by what we do than anything we ever say. So we have to make sure that there are rules in place. I always talk with kids if they want to limit their usage. Say they're doing 5 hours a day, they want to go down to 4. You have to replace that hour with something healthy, or you will go back to your unhealthy habits. So set a goal of reading a book for an hour, right? And go slow. Like, you can't expect them to change behavior overnight. But that's why, again, we go back to when the devices are first implemented, no devices in bedrooms. Please, parents, if there's nothing else you take away from this, please get the phones and devices out of the bedrooms at night. They have no place in there. Kids need to go to bed to go to sleep. 50% of all Canadian kids are getting 7 or less hours of sleep a night. And a lot of it has to do with online. So we really want to encourage parents to have those rules from the start and to say it, mean it, and follow through with it. So don't just give in because it's easier. And if they go to bed with their phone, they're quiet. And we need to stick hard with those rules and explain to kids why they're there.
Val, thank you. Thank you for coming to NACTV and sharing this very valuable information about internet safety and providing us with some tools and different websites that we can go on to educate ourselves more. And thank you very much to all the viewers, and I hope you join us next time on Coffee Chat.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
I want to say thank you to the community. Again, NEPWA is always so supportive of this, Miles for Mental Health, and also to the schools for understanding the importance of it and
Yes.
the ongoing, every year we come in. So NEPWA is the only school that I visit consistently every single year. So I'm very pleased to always be
Yes.
here. And you have a group of wonderful kids in this community, and I enjoy my day with them today. So
Yeah.
thank you for your time. It
Thank
was
you very
wonderful to
much.
meet you.
Yes.
Thank you.
See you next year, I hope.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Thank you.